Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Alchemist. Tonight, we descend into the workshop of a man who, under candlelight and suspicion, brews something most unusual, an elixir said to turn iron nails into pure silver. The bubbling vat glows strangely in the dark, smelling of vinegar and burnt rosemary. Outside, the fog presses against the crooked shutters like a ghost trying to peer inside. You probably want to know this before we begin. The silver doesn't behave the way silver should. It moves when it shouldn't, and it remembers things you haven't told it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know your location and the time you're tuning in. I'm always curious where the night reaches you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The woodshed creaks with every breeze, its boards loose and warped like the spine of an old book left too long in damp. Inside, lit by the trembling glow of a single green candle, the alchemist stirs. His name, rarely used aloud, is Perrin, though most in town refer to him simply as the bent one in the glade. His workshop is a cluttered cathedral of the curious bones arranged in spirals, dried herbs, bundled like shrunken humans, a copper cage that holds nothing but a mirror. But tonight, the centerpiece is a cauldron no bigger than a soup pot, perched atop a clay stove warmed by coals stolen from a blacksmith's forge. Perrin hums to himself, something tuneless and faintly anxious. In his gloved hand is a ladle carved from the horn of an extinct goat, or so the travelling monk claimed when he sold it. Within the liquid swirl of the cauldron, a glowing murk churns, bile yellow threaded with ripples of metallic blue. A faint ozone sting rises from it, biting the nose like lightning does just before it strikes. On the wooden bench beside the cauldron, a bowl of ordinary iron nails waits. The kind you find holding roofs together, the kind farmers bite between their teeth while they work, just to hold them somewhere. Rusted, uneven, utterly mundane. And yet, each one is chosen, measured by weight, scored lightly along the shaft. A soft chant, some nonsense mixes of old Latin and village German, escapes Perrin's cracked lips as he lifts a nail and drops it into the bubbling vat. The liquid briefly sizzles. Then silence. Perrin watches. There's a pause, 10 seconds, maybe 12, and then the cauldron trembles, just slightly. Inside, the nail gleams, changes. Not the way iron glows when heated, but a shift from the inside out, as if the metal's soul is being rewritten. Its color warps from dull gray to a lustrous, bone-white silver with soft edges, as if moonlight has been frozen into shape. He lifts it out with the horn ladle. Drips slide off, and they don't hiss when they hit the table. They simply vanish. The nail, now silver and humming faintly, though that may be Perrin's own heartbeat, rests in a bowl lined with wool. He adds another, then another. Each one converts in turn. It's not transmutation, not in the strictest sense. The old texts say gold is the final state, the incorruptible one. Silver is mercurial, the halfway metal, the one that doesn't know if it wants to shine or tarnish. And yet, here it is, formed from crude iron by hands that tremble as they work. A historical note: should you be curious, in the real 13th century, alchemists like Albertus Magnus did indeed write of vivifying metals, claiming they could be infused with properties of life if treated with enough care and prayer. Whether any such attempts ever succeeded, historians still argue. Perrin doesn't care much for debates. He believes the potion works, and that's all. Outside, an owl cries, loud and close, a bad omen in these parts. But Perrin pays it no mind. He places the 6th silver nail in the bowl. The wool underneath is lightly scorched, as if the silver holds a kind of heat that doesn't belong to fire. By the time the candle burns halfway down its stub, he's converted 30 nails, each now bright and unnervingly clean. No ridges, no scratches. They look too perfect. One of them shifts, just slightly. Perrin blinks. Nothing now. Perhaps a trick of the light. He gathers them, wraps them in lambskin cloth, and tucks the bundle into a locked drawer beneath the workbench. Then he pours a dark glaze over the cauldron, muttering a few nonsense syllables for safety, and extinguishes the flame. And here comes the fringe fact of the night. In medieval Bohemia, It was believed that if silver was created rather than mined, it had no soul and therefore could be inhabited, not by ghosts, necessarily, but by something. That belief never quite made it into mainstream church doctrine, but it danced around the margins like a hungry rat. Perrin shuffles to his cot in the corner, passing shelves of flasks and scrolls. He does not notice the faint silver smear left behind on the edge of the drawer, or how, beneath the woolen wrapping, two of the nails now point in the same direction, south. He sleeps poorly, dreams of nails tapping against wood. When dawn rolls in like cold breath under a door, the workshop is quiet, still. Except, if you listened close you might hear it. A faint scrape, then another, like something metallic moving across a surface not meant to carry it. A tiny scuttling, then silence again. Purin sleeps on, but the silver does not. The morning light has a way of exposing lies that night prefers to keep warm. In Purin's woodshed, the thin sun rays trickle through the warped planks and smear across the floor like spilled milk. It touches the workbench, the sealed drawer, the dark stains on the wool where the silver nails had rested, now faintly rippled with dust trails that weren't there last night. Purin stirs awake with the groan of someone who has slept near too many chemicals. His spine creaks more than the floorboards, and the back of his throat feels like it's been scrubbed with chalk. No dreams cling to his memory, just an odd sense of metal in his mouth, as if he's been gnawing on iron while asleep. He shuffles across the workshop, barefoot and dishevelled, pulling open the drawer. He expects the little lambskin bundle to still be curled neatly in its place. Instead, he finds the cloth twisted, half unwrapped, the silver nails scattered like the aftermath of a dice game. He blinks, rubs his eyes. Maybe the drawer slid open in the night. Maybe a mouse? Except there are no droppings, no chew marks, no signs of anything living, only drag lines like scratches left by. No, nails don't crawl. He lifts one and examines it. Smooth, cold, beautiful, slightly warmer at the base, as if it had been held tight for hours. Places it back. His fingertips itch where they touch the metal. As he gathers the rest, he notices something stranger still. All the nails have shifted into a tight crescent shape, as though they'd been drawn toward the same point, as if in the night they'd been pulled, ever so gently, by some magnetic lullaby. Historically speaking, silver isn't magnetic. That's one of the reasons it's prized. It resists the pull of the earth's field. But there were whispers in certain monasteries that living silver, made by human hands rather than mined from soil, could twitch at the pole star. That rumour, largely dismissed, appears in the margins of a Flemish apothecary's travel journal around 1282. Historians still argue whether the passage was a metaphor or a mistranslation. Perrin isn't interested in metaphors. He drops the nails into a thick oak bowl and latches the drawer firmly this time, placing a stone on top for good measure. Then he opens the door and steps into the yard, the crispness of morning wrapping around his face like a slap from a polite ghost. He needs water, needs to clear his head, needs bread too, maybe the tavern. By the time the sun is high enough to warm the wooden shutters, Perrin returns from the village, half a loaf of crusty black bread under one arm and a flask of watered-down ale in the other. He greets no one. Most villagers don't greet him either. There are rumours that he talks to insects, that he burns offerings made from toenail clippings, that he made a boy mute by whispering into his ear. All false, except the insect thing. He does talk to them sometimes. They listen better than priests. When he re-enters the workshop, the air feels wrong, not just stale, off. He approaches the workbench. The drawer remains shut, the stone still on top, but beside it, a single silver nail on the floor. He hadn't dropped any this morning, had he? He picks it up, slower this time. And now he's sure of it. The silver is warmer than it should be, as if it holds a pulse. Out of instinct he touches it to the iron latch of the drawer. It lets out a soft hiss. Not steam, a sound like breath through teeth. Then quiet. He drops it in the bowl and steps back. This is the first moment he thinks, perhaps aloud, I've made something I don't understand. Fringe theories, those delightful little detours that don't make it into mainstream history, suggest that certain forms of created silver had nervous echoes, a term used by Friar Dunst in an unpublished letter to a bishop in 1304. He claimed that the silver weeps when heated and shuffles itself to sleep when left alone. Most scholars think Friar Dunst had a touch of monk madness from mercury fumes. Others think he might have been onto something he couldn't fully name. Perrin returns to the cauldron, stares into its still-cooled surface. The liquid is opaque now, faintly iridescent. He lifts the horn ladle and swirls it. A low shimmer moves across the top, like oil on soup. He contemplates dropping in another nail, but hesitates. Instead, he removes the cauldron from the firestone, places it on a cold slab near the wall. Then, from beneath a canvas sack, he pulls a fresh jar of beetle resin and a coiled scroll of ingredients. The process, he believes, must be re-examined. He doesn't notice the silver nail on the windowsill, how it turns ever so slightly as he moves across the room. That evening, with the sun dipping red over the trees, he returns to the drawer and removes the oak bowl. It's lighter than before. He freezes. 5 nails gone, not misplaced. Gone. And the bowl's edge has tiny deliberate scratches. Scratches. Not random, aligned, like claw marks left in retreat. He drops the bowl. It clatters to the ground. He leans on the table and exhales a breath that's more like a prayer. Somewhere behind him, something tiny and metallic shifts, unseen. He hears nothing, only the faraway sound of hooves in the village. Now, for your historical tidbit of the night, it is documented that the Knights Templar, before their dissolution, once offered a silver coin that, when left overnight, would spin slowly on its own. It was deemed a holy relic, or a devil's token, depending on the bishop. The coin was lost, or maybe locked away, or maybe crawling still. Back in the woodshed, night falls with its usual softness. The candle flickers back to life, and Perrin, against his better judgment, unlocks the cauldron again. He needs to know what he's made. He needs to understand. He drops a final iron nail into the potion, watches as it turns silver. And this time, he swears it shudders in the ladle before he sets it down. It begins with a hiss. Not loud, not alarming, more like the sound wet bark makes when tossed onto embers. The silver nail rests in the ladle, trembling faintly. The vibration is subtle, nearly invisible, but the shimmer across the surface of the potion seems to lean toward it, like water reaching for a thirsty root. Perrin holds his breath. The potion's color begins to shift again, its hue more volatile than before. The familiar murky yellow-blue now flashes with hints of violet, like a bruise spreading across the sky before a storm. He knows better than to stir it further, yet his hand itches with the compulsion. The nail in the ladle twitches again, as if it hears something he cannot. He places it gently on the wool padding beside the others. This time he watches carefully. He marks its position with a chalk circle on the table. He turns away, counts aloud to 10, turns back. It has moved, not much. Just enough to leave the chalk circle incomplete. Just enough to send that soft throb of dread through his fingertips. The next few hours are devoted to testing, scientific method, as it might be called centuries later. But in Perrin's world, it's trial and error, mostly error, and often marked by smoke. He heats a nail over a candle flame. It squeals, not loudly, but a high whine, like glass under pressure. He drops it. It doesn't fall straight. It twists mid-air, landing on its point, upright, then flops over slowly, almost dramatically. He places another in a metal vise, clamps it tight, and taps it with a tiny forge hammer. The sound rings wrong, not like silver, not like any metal he's worked with. It's hollow, like hitting a bird cage. When he files the head down, the filings dance slightly before settling into a loose spiral on the bench. He sweeps them away with the back of his hand, but they resist momentarily, like crumbs that don't want to leave a favorite plate. And when he sets one of the silver nails on the floor overnight, nestled into a chalk pentagram out of sheer paranoia, he wakes to find the pentagram smudged and the nail sitting neatly on the windowsill. Looking out, the next day he takes a different approach. He visits the blacksmith. Merrin is a man of soot and shoulders, broad hands, broad voice, and a temper like a summer storm, sudden and hot but gone in a blink. He greets Perrin with a grunt and a raised brow. "Need some sharpening done?" he asks, half mocking. Perrin just opens his palm and shows him the nail. Merrin squints. "Pretty thing. Yours? Made it last night. Silver, that's not your usual trick. Smells off." He sniffs it again. "Bit like burnt eggs and pepper." Merrin agrees to test it under his forge. The heat is immense, bellows hissing like dragons chewing steam. Perrin watches as Merrin places the nail on the anvil and begins heating it. Nothing happens at first. Then the hissing starts. Louder now, a sharp, fast burst of sound like a snake taking a breath through its teeth. The silver nail bends, not from the hammer but on its own, arcing as if stretching. When Merrin finally brings the hammer down, the metal flattens but doesn't break. Instead, it recoils like muscle. And then it emits a soft screech that silences both men for a full breath. Merrin drops the hammer. "What in God's holy ash was that?" he asks. Perrin has no answer. He gathers the misshapen nail with a set of tongs, drops it into a pouch, and thanks the blacksmith for his time. Back in the woodshed, he examines the warped silver lump. It pulses, not visually, not in any measurable way, but when he closes his hand around it, he feels something move from inside. Historians still argue whether any medieval alchemist ever documented autonomic metallurgy, the notion that some artificially created metals could adapt, even react, to their environment. The famous singing iron of Cordoba was said to him at dusk, though no physical samples remain. Some claim it was folklore, others believe it was simply lost to time or hidden. Perrin now believes, more than that, he fears. He returns to his cauldron, measures the last of the blue mercury resin, then he adds a fresh tincture of orpiment, a compound that should, in theory, inhibit movement by disrupting inner energies. That's how the parchment phrase it, anyway. The new batch simmers differently, thicker, slower. He watches it churn like a pot of dreaming eels. This time, when he drops a nail in, it takes twice as long to transform. When it does, the silver is duller, not quite as beautiful. He places it beside the others and waits. No motion. He sighs. Relief. Until he turns around again, and the silver nails have rearranged themselves into an arrow, pointing toward the door. You'd think that'd be enough to make him stop. You'd think. Here's tonight's quirky footnote. In 1267, a French alchemist, known only as Benoit the Pale, attempted to use enchanted silver to create self-replicating keys. According to church archives, his workshop burned to the ground, but not from within. The floor had been torn open. His silver key, never found. Perrin, perhaps unknowingly, is following in Benoit's footsteps. As the night sets in, he takes out parchment and begins notes in shaking script. He draws the layout of the nails, the scratches, the temperatures. He writes the word remembering and then scratches it out. He doesn't sleep, not because he won't, but because he can hear the nails clicking across the floorboards like beetles with sharp shoes. The sun breaks through the mist, like a spy slipping past the village gate, barely noticed, but always watching. Perrin hasn't slept. He leans against the windowsill, face pale, eyes red from keeping vigil. His ears, attuned to every shift and creak in the floorboards, twitch at sounds only he seems to hear. The silver nails haven't moved again, not that he's seen, but he no longer trusts stillness. He needs proof, and for that, he needs someone with coin and curiosity. The tavern in the village is not exactly the place for scholarly debate. It smells of sweat, boiled cabbage, and regret. But it's also where silver gets attention, especially silver that looks too clean to be local. He takes a pouch of 5 nails, each wrapped in thin cloth. As he steps into the tavern's haze, heads turn, not because they know him, but because they don't want to. He smells of ash and worm root. He looks like a scarecrow that's forgotten its purpose. At a corner table, a man with red-stained fingertips and a merchant's coin belt haggles with a butcher over the price of dried venison. Perrin approaches, silent as fog. He waits, then without a word, he sets one silver nail on the table. The merchant stops mid-sentence. It glints unnaturally, even in the dim torchlight. "That real?" the butcher asks, voice low. The merchant pulls a lens from his vest pocket, an affectation but a useful one. He examines the nail, taps it with his ring, sniffs it. Pure, he mutters, too pure. Perrin says nothing. How much? The merchant finally asks. Perrin raises 2 fingers. The merchant laughs. For a nail. Perrin shrugs, picks up the nail to leave. The merchant grabs his wrist. Wait. In the end, he pays 3 silver coins per nail, an overpay. He can't help himself. By morning, the silver nails are in circulation, bartered, swapped, sold. And the next night, the merchant returns. Only this time, he's pale, wet with sweat, and visibly shaken. He finds Perrin at the edge of the well, washing glass vials in silence. You cursed me, the merchant hisses. Perrin raises a brow, says nothing. The silver's gone, all of it, disappeared. Not stolen, not melted, just gone. 1 coin even twisted out of shape, crawled off the table. If you believe my son. Perrin asks 1 question. Which direction? The merchant blinks. What? When it moved. Did it move toward something? The merchant frowns. Toward the hearth. Why? Perrin says nothing, just nods once, walks away. Later that day, he returns to his workshop. He lights the corner candles and opens the drawer again. All the nails are gone. Every last one. But something new waits in their place. A circle of ash with a single indentation at the center, small, shallow, and shaped exactly like a nail head pressed lightly into wood. No burn marks, just the impression. The alchemist sits heavily on the stool and stares. Something is mimicking placement, like it's learning from him. Historians still argue whether medieval concepts of sympathetic metal, where one piece of metal retained awareness of its twin, were rooted in science or superstition. The Book of Stones and Shadows, attributed to Gervase of Tilbury, describes shadow twins, metal objects that reflect the position or fate of their sibling pieces. Of course, no physical evidence of such metals exists. Allegedly, later that evening, Perrin gathers more iron nails and repeats the process, despite himself. The potion is growing unstable. Its color shifts more rapidly now, and the surface trembles as if something swims beneath. He fortifies the brew with sage oil and diluted vinegar, hoping to calm whatever is waking inside it. This time, only 2 nails are converted. The rest dissolve into a thin, silvery sludge that coats the bottom of the cauldron like melted pearl. He stores the 2 finished nails separately in a lid box lined with salt. That's an old trick. Salt draws out impurities. Lead contains energy. Or so the Abbey scrolls claim. He sleeps briefly, but dreams again of tapping. Slow, rhythmic. Not quite random. He wakes to a skittering noise. Not inside. Underneath. He gets up, slowly, presses his ear to the floor, listens. It's faint, metallic, as though hundreds of small things are crawling just beneath the floorboards, going somewhere. He stays still for a very long time. When he finally moves, it's to fetch his spade. He digs in the yard. Beneath the window, he turns over earth that hasn't been touched in years. It's damp, rich with worms. But then he finds it. A silver trail, thin, incomplete, but unmistakable, like something had slithered beneath the soil, carving a path in faint shimmer, not like wire, not like thread, more like migration. And here's your curious tidbit. In medieval Eastern Europe, it was believed that silver had the ability to choose its owner, that coins would return to those with the strongest claim of need or vengeance. This belief led to families keeping coins in locked boxes under their beds, sometimes tied with hair or sealed with a drop of blood. Paranoid. Maybe, but Perrin starts to understand. Back inside, the lead box is undisturbed. He opens it. The 2 nails are still inside, but they're touching now. He had placed them apart. The cabinet in Perrin's workshop is tall, crooked, and smells faintly of mildew and thyme. It's built from old carriage wood, scavenged from a wreck decades ago. It holds dried herbs, crushed bone powders, and the sorts of jars that make people ask no questions. It also has a bottom drawer that Perrin has rarely used until now. After the events of the lead box, he's decided containment isn't enough. He needs to observe, and for that, he needs space and darkness. He places the 2 silver nails inside the drawer, carefully aligned on a fresh square of white wool. He sprinkles the edges with salt and closes the drawer. Then he waits. An hour passes. Then two. He pretends to read, though his eyes flick to the cabinet every other breath. The room is unnaturally quiet, as if even the wind is holding itself still. Eventually, he opens the drawer again. The wool is torn. Not cut. Torn. Frayed in the center like a fabric that's been gnawed by invisible mouths. The nails are still there, but again they're touching. Even closer this time. Nearly parallel, pointing the same way. Perrin closes the drawer with a soft click and leans back in his chair. They're trying to organize. Or worse, trying to convene. Historians still argue whether early alchemical records that mention congregating metals were metaphorical. Some scholars believe these references were simply warnings against storing unstable compounds together. Others think they were cautionary tales, early allegories about human greed and unnatural invention. But Perrin now has physical proof that whatever this silver is, it isn't merely matter. It has intent. Weak, perhaps, but growing. By the next morning, he decides to escalate. He crafts a small wooden enclosure, half cabinet, half cage, and lines it with straw, chalk symbols, and mirrors. Mirrors are important. In folklore, they confuse spirits. Perrin doesn't know if this counts as spirit work, but at this point, he's open to methods outside his usual scrolls. He places 5 nails in the enclosure, 2 from the new batch, 3 from the earlier coin pouch that mysteriously returned to his doorstep overnight. Yes, returned. That morning, wrapped in red cloth, was the pouch he had sold to the merchant. No note, no explanation, just the nails inside, but they were different now. They no longer gleamed. They pulsed. As he closes the cabinet door and locks it with a thin chain, he notices his fingertips are darker than usual, as if the metal's touch left behind a stain. Hours later, he returns. He opens the cabinet and sees them. The nails are crawling, slow, deliberate. Not chaotic, like insects, but measured, like fingers remembering the act of walking. They drag their points across the straw, making tiny furrows. All of them converge at the back corner of the cabinet, where the mirror is cracked. They weren't just moving, they were trying to hide. That's when he builds the grid. Perrin lays out a massive iron-framed tray, flat, smooth, and coated in powdered chalk. He places 10 nails at the center and draws a circle around them. Then he leaves, shuts the workshop, waits until night. When he returns with only moonlight to see by, the nails have formed lines. Lines that intersect, points of direction, and one of those lines leads directly toward the cellar. Perrin hasn't gone into the cellar in years. It smells of mildew and regret, a place where old ingredients go to rot and where the mushrooms grow too long for comfort. But now he fetches the iron key from the back shelf and descends the narrow stairs, candle in hand. Dust coats the shelves. Cobwebs thicken the air. But something else is here. He sees it. A smear of silver across the floor. Not poured, not dripped, dragged. He follows the line to an old cupboard wedged in the far corner. A relic from a previous tenant, or perhaps older still. He opens it. Inside, beneath bundled cloth and dried twigs, is a glass jar, sealed, dusty, and within it, silver nails, 20, maybe more, all packed tightly. All still, but they're not from his batch. The shapes are different. Some are thicker, cruder, older. He lifts the jar. It hums in his hand, tiny, constant, like the vibration of a trapped bee. He places the jar on a shelf and returns upstairs, mind spinning. If these aren't his, then whose were they, and why were they buried? Tonight's historical curiosity in 14th century Saxony. Monks discovered a trove of silver nails beneath a collapsed abbey wall. They documented them, prayed over them, then reburied them under a cross-shaped slab. Their final note reads, "They sing when no one is near. That slab is now gone, lost during a fire, or stolen," depending on whom you ask. Back in the workshop, Perrin opens his locked cabinet once more. The nails have stopped moving. For now, but he notices something deeply unsettling. They've carved something in the straw, letters. 4 of them, crude, uneven, but unmistakably human. They spell home. Perrin doesn't speak the word aloud. Home. He traces the straw letters with the tip of a broken quill. Not to smudge them, he wants the shapes preserved, but to feel if they're real. They are, pressed deep into the straw, like they'd been written by invisible hands, or crawling nails. He sits in silence for what feels like hours, listening to the groan of the rafters, the creak of the forest wind outside, the pulse in his own ears. Then the knock, a dull, deliberate rap on the workshop door, not urgent, not afraid, authoritative. He opens it slowly. The man standing there wears a robe once white, now more the shade of week-old parchment, gold stitching frays along the hems, and his hat is too large, tilting back like it's trying to abandon his head entirely. His smile is filled with gums. No teeth, Brother Perrin, the man says, voice as thin as a wasp's wing. The church has need of you. Perrin doesn't invite him in, doesn't need to. The bishop pushes past him like dust blown through a crack. He walks slowly around the room, tapping jars and shelves with the crooked end of his silver-handled cane. The air grows colder with every step he takes. I have it on good authority, the bishop begins, that you've recently produced an alchemical marvel. Something the church has long sought, a miracle of transformation. He pauses at the workbench, looks down at the silver nail. The bishop doesn't pick it up. He just watches it. May I ask, how long does it stay still before it begins to protest? Perrin stiffens. You've seen this before? The bishop smiles wider. His gums shine. Oh, my dear alchemist, there is little this world does that surprises the church. We have long known of metal that moves, of silver that seeks, of things shaped by human hands but ruled by older laws. He turns, now, fully facing Perrin, and we've also learned how to use them. This is where the tension stiffens like a blade. Perrin does not trust the church. Few in his profession do, but he also knows that resisting a bishop, especially one with no teeth and far too much information, isn't wise. The bishop requests a demonstration. Perrin hesitates, but the man is already sitting. So reluctantly, Perrin retrieves the lead box. He sets it on the table, opens the lid, and gently places a silver nail on the wood. The bishop watches, waiting. Nothing happens at first, then the nail twitches. Just once. It rotates, slowly, like a compass needle trying to remember which way is north. The bishop leans closer. The nail begins to hum, not a song, not a note, a vibration. The bishop whispers almost lovingly, "They always find their way." Their way where? Perrin asks. The bishop looks up. His eyes are too clear, too old. Home, that word again, as if the nails know a place they've never been, or remember one they've been exiled from. The bishop then makes his offer. The church, he says, wants the silver, all of it. He doesn't care how many nails Perrin can produce. He wants boxes full, barrels, if possible. He promises gold, protection, an indulgence even, should Perrin fear for his soul. Perrin remains silent. The bishop leaves behind a small satchel, leather, embossed with the seal of a crooked sun, and tells Perrin he'll return in 1 week. He warns with a smile too wide to be kind, don't let them starve. Once he's gone, Perrin opens the satchel. Inside is a single glass vial, with a sliver of silver suspended in fluid, but it's not a nail, it's something older, thinner, like a silver thread, and it's moving. Perrin sets it on the table, watches it coil and uncoil like a worm in slow motion. This isn't new, this is something the bishop brought with him. Whatever this silver is, it's been around far longer than Perrin's cauldron. A historical fact in the Vatican's secret archives, confirmed by at least one defector monk, there is mention of silver ardentis, or the burning silver. Allegedly retrieved during the Crusades, it was said to slither from relic to relic and was considered too dangerous to destroy. Instead, it was locked beneath 12 seals in an undisclosed chapel. Historians still argue whether this tale is pure myth, or whether the relic remains buried under stone and vow. Back in the workshop, Perrin places the vial next to his own silver nail. They both vibrate in sync, the exact same hum. He draws a line of chalk between them. They do not cross it, but they lean toward it, as if waiting for the permission to meet. Later that night, Perrin revisits the cabinet. The straw letters are gone, wiped away, but new markings appear, tiny scratches. A spiral, not random, not decorative. A map. He doesn't know, but the spiral ends at a square. A box. Just like the lead one, which now feels lighter when he lifts it. He opens it. The nail is gone, and there's a faint smear of silver dust across the wool, spiraling inward. Perrin is no longer sure who is observing whom. And for tonight's quirky fact, did you know that some medieval alchemists believed silver could inherit memory from objects it touched during transformation? That's why they often stirred their brews with carved bone or buried silver beneath gravestones before forging it into tools. It was thought to give the metal context, a personality, which raises a question. Perrin can no longer ignore what context have his nails inherited, and who else remembers. The potion bubbles with less enthusiasm tonight. Perrin watches it simmer with the expression of a man who's raised a child only to find it hissing at him. He adds the usual components: iron filings, vinegar-soaked sage, powdered bone, but the mixture thickens too quickly, forming skin across the top like curdled milk. It resists the heat, pushing back against the flame as though the potion itself no longer wishes to transform. Or perhaps it's just tired, or worse, aware. He doesn't try to force it. Not this time. He removes the pot from the fire and lets it cool. It weeps a thin silvery trail down its side like sap from a wounded tree. He doesn't clean it. Instead, he returns to the scrolls. Hours of them. Old ones rolled so tightly the parchment cracks when opened. He sifts through margins and footnotes. Forgotten words scratched in beetle ink. He's searching now, not just for formulae, but for precedent. For anyone, anywhere, who's seen what he's seeing. In one scroll, he finds it. A half-sentence in a tattered letter, attributed to a minor monk chemist from the Swabian Alps. When silver forgets its origin, it reaches for the shape it once possessed. Perrin freezes. That explains a great deal. Or nothing at all. He rereads the line. It suggests silver retains a memory, not just of being silver, but of what it once was before, its ore shape, as some alchemists call it. In this case, the shape is simple. A nail. But now, that shape is stirring, waking, reasserting itself. A memory with purpose. He recalls what the bishop said: "Don't let them starve." That same night, he dreams of iron roots. Not metaphorical, real ones. Thick, rust-colored tendrils growing beneath the floorboards, bursting up through the stone, twisting through the bones of long-dead rats. At the center of it all, a single, gleaming silver spike, pulsating like a heartbeat. He wakes gasping, fingers trembling. The cauldron is cold, the workbench untouched. But the lead box is open. He's sure he locked it. The nail is still there. Except, it's not a nail anymore. It's thinner now. Slightly longer. The point dulled, like it's reshaping itself into something else, something remembered. Perrin pulls away. He writes notes by candlelight. This time, he doesn't bother with alchemical terms. He writes like a man journaling the movements of an unfamiliar species, changing when unseen, aligning toward common point. Possible memory of origin, not becoming tools, becoming selves. He shudders at the last line, considers scratching it out, doesn't. In desperation, or perhaps curiosity, he adjusts the potion again. Less mercury, more clay dust. He stirs slowly, whispering words he doesn't quite remember learning. The potion reacts, shifts to a greenish sheen, like moss on old stone. He drops one nail. It dissolves completely. No shimmer, no transmutation. Gone. He repeats the experiment twice. Same result. Something has changed. The mixture no longer wants to transform. Or perhaps the nails no longer need it. Here's your historical fact of the night. In 13th century Milan, a failed transmutation experiment reportedly resulted in a batch of silver that could not be melted again. The metal retained its shape despite fire and hammering, and when broken into pieces, each piece eventually reformed. The workshop where it was made was sealed, later burned. No record of what became of the silver. Back in the present, Perrin places the altered nail into a jar of vinegar and ash. It immediately begins to rotate. Not float, rotate, slowly, clockwise. It doesn't stop. He leaves it overnight. By morning, it has etched a spiral in the sediment at the bottom of the jar. This matches the spiral he found in the straw. There's a pattern here. He knows it, but what does it mean? He tries testing the silver under magnification. Peering through a polished lens, he expects to see imperfections, grain, maybe the usual residue of impurities. Instead, he sees striations, tiny, repeating grooves that shouldn't exist. They look almost like ridges, like fingerprints. But metal doesn't have fingerprints. Unless it remembers. He backs away from the lens. Writes furiously. Not human memory. Structural, intentional. What is shaping this? And now, the footnote of the night. A quirky one, if you enjoy this sort of thing. In 1321, a minor Andalusian alchemist named Khalid ibn Far claimed that metal could be taught to grow. His experiments were widely mocked. He believed silver, when breathed on with purpose, would seek its own perfection. One surviving note reads, "What crawls today will walk tomorrow." Perrin doesn't laugh anymore. That evening, as the sun vanishes behind the glade, he returns to the jar. The spiral has changed. It's now more complex. Layered, mathematical. He sketches it, compares it to the markings from the cabinet straw, and overlays them. They match, precisely. Not a coincidence, not art, a message, or worse, a blueprint. The next day he goes to the market for bread, tries to behave as if nothing's changed. But when he returns, the workshop feels heavier. He notices immediately. The candles don't flicker. The air doesn't move, like the very walls are holding their breath. And there, on the windowsill, sits another silver nail. Not one of his, different shape. Crude, rough, but unmistakably moving. A gift or a warning? He doesn't know, but he takes it in, sets it beside the others, and whispers without meaning to. Welcome back. The storm arrives before midnight. Not the kind with thunder and flashing skies. This one rolls in slow, dense, and wet. Rain taps at the windows like fingernails. The woodshed breathes with each gust, the old boards groaning as if remembering past winters. Inside, Perrin stares at a sealed glass jar. It was delivered at dusk, left on the doorstep with no knock, no note, no sign of travel in the mud, except one faint, shimmering trail leading back into the trees. The jar contains a bundle of silver nails, sealed in yellowed wax and bound with red string. Someone else has made these. Someone who knows what they're doing. He places the jar next to his own. The difference is immediate. His nails uniform, polished, methodical. These crude, inconsistent. Some are bent, others malformed, but they vibrate with a hunger. His don't yet show. He doesn't dare open the jar. Instead, he lights the fire and opens a box buried beneath old scrolls. Inside, a folded letter, written decades ago in ink that smells faintly of wine and rust. It's from Brother Willem, a name Perrin hasn't spoken in years. Willem was an alchemist once, a friend, perhaps more, but he vanished before finishing his great experiment. This letter was sent the year he disappeared. Perrin, if you've reached this page, I've either succeeded or ceased to exist. Enclosed is the final batch I created. Do not free it. It is stable only under compression. I was wrong about their memory. It's not inherited. It's transmitted. They speak, in a way. They remember all of us, all the way back. Forgive me. Perrin closes the letter with trembling fingers. He'd forgotten the way Willem wrote, concise but frantic, as if trying to explain a fever before it consumed him. The jar next to it begins to rattle, not violently, but rhythmically, as though responding to memory, as though recognizing the room, or the man who holds its brother's voice in his hand. Perrin begins a list. It grows quickly. Silver created through potion, animated, external silver aware before arrival. Both respond to proximity, possibly communicating. He writes the last point twice. He unseals a second box, his archive of experiments long shelved. At the bottom, beneath burnt herbs and a rat skull he once believed held alchemical properties, he finds the key, a fragment of what Willem called the listening loop, a ring of polished brass and mirrored silver, shaped to amplify vibrations through stone, a crude sound chamber. They had built one, once, just for fun, to hear the breath of metals, as Willem joked. He never expected it to become relevant again. He rebuilds the loop, places it on the workbench, sets the sealed jar in its center, waits, and then the sound begins. Not a voice, not a word. A pulsing hum, barely above silence. The glass vibrates. The string wrapped around the jar shudders in response, as if plucked by an invisible hand. Perrin adjusts the loop, adds the second jar, his own batch. Now both jars hum, but out of sync. He watches for patterns, for alignment, for language, and slowly, painfully slowly, the hums begin to match. Not perfectly, but enough. It's a conversation. He is sure of it. And for tonight's historical truth, in 1274, a Persian physician named Nasir ibn Talif wrote of metal songs, frequencies only perceptible through crystal and prayer. He claimed certain ores could store grief, that forged weapons might weep beneath moonlight if used to spill family blood. Naturally, no one believed him, but a single page of his writings survives in the Biblioteca Secreta in Florence, sealed, ironically, in silver. Back in the woodshed, the storm deepens. Wind howls through the glade. Perrin stares at the two jars, now vibrating in harmony. What they're saying he doesn't know, but it's growing stronger, faster, urgent. He seals the loop, wraps it in salt-dipped linen, not to silence them, but to slow the pace. The last thing he needs is a conversation that runs ahead of his understanding. The storm knocks out the candlelight for a moment. In that blink of darkness, something knocks on the window. When he lights the flame again, nothing's there, except another jar, on the sill, smaller, no string, inside one nail. Floating in oil, Perrin lifts it carefully. The moment it passes the threshold of the workshop, the two other jars sing, a single sharp tone, then silence. The floating nail glows faintly, even without light. It hums, and slowly it rotates inside the oil, like a needle searching for its compass. He sets it on the floor. It points straight toward the cellar, the same direction the other nails once crept toward. He hesitates, then follows, down the stairs. The silver trail in the dirt is more defined now. It loops behind the cupboard, toward a corner he never thought to check. He kneels, brushes the stone aside, finds a hatch, buried. Sealed in iron, he feels the pull, not magical, magnetic, like gravity, with an opinion. He does not open it, not yet. Instead, he returns to the workbench and writes one final line. They are not asking to be made, they are asking to be remembered. The hatch beneath the cellar floor stares up at Perrin, like a closed eye, ancient and irritated. Iron hinges rusted to near extinction, etched with lines he doesn't recognize, curving, looping, nothing like Latin, more like river currents that decided to write. He stands above it, one hand pressed against the iron lid. It's warm, he has not warmed it. He pulls back. On the table upstairs, the three jars begin humming again. This time their tones are not harmonious. They pulse in different rhythms like overlapping voices, arguing across a long hall. He sets one jar away from the others. The moment he does, the hum breaks, like tension snapped between strings. They don't want to be separated. The implications send a chill down his spine. If they're fragments of something whole, what happens when they reunite? And who, or what, do they become? He places each jar back in its original configuration inside the listening loop, but seals the loop in a leather satchel laced with iron thread protection, or containment, probably wishful thinking. Then reluctantly he returns to the hatch. Torch in hand, he scrapes away the soil, uncovers more iron carvings. Each curve matches one of the patterns the silver nails etched into the straw. The spirals weren't decorative, they were keys. He fetches a silver nail from the lead box and lays it into the center groove on the hatch. It fits, snug. He turns it like a lockpick. The iron clicks. The hatch groans. Opens. A puff of cold air snakes upward. Not damp, not dusty. Dry and bitter, like air that's been waiting in the lungs of the dead. He descends slowly, torch leading the way. Beneath is not just a crawl space. It's a room, a chamber, square, stone-lined, carved from the earth with precision no peasant tools could manage. The walls glistened faintly, metal veins running through them like fossils. At the center, a pedestal, stone, cracked, and embedded in its surface, dozens of silver nails, bent, twisted, some still twitching like worms in salt. They are not his. They are older. Some show signs of having been once crucifix spikes, decorative ends. Others appear sharpened for weapons. And a few are just odd. Geometries no nail should possess. Angles that strain the eye. He walks slowly around the pedestal. Each nail is aligned toward the center. Their points aimed at a small cavity, empty, or once empty. Something was removed or escaped. Above the pedestal, etched in the stone, a sentence. Not Latin, not Greek, but as Perrin squints he realizes he knows it. Not the words, the meaning. That which is forgotten remembers itself. He backs away. This is not his work. This is Willem's chamber. Or someone before even him. He hears footsteps behind him, turns fast. But no one, only echo. Then soft scraping. A nail on stone. He spins again, sees one of the nails shift in the pedestal. It moves, barely, but it wakes. One after another they stir, not violently, but with certainty. All pointed toward the cavity in the center, all reaching. He doesn't run, but he climbs out fast, shuts the hatch, stands on it. The metal warms under his feet again. He breathes hard, sweat beads along his brow. And here's your historical moment. In the mid-1200s, a set of relics was confiscated from a ruined monastery in eastern France. Among them was a wooden chest, sealed with wax and thorns. Inside, over 40 silver nails, each etched with marks scholars still cannot identify. Some claimed the symbols were language, others mathematical representations of light. One nail reportedly disappeared during transit. The remaining were melted. The fire burned blue for 6 days. They called it a mistake. Perrin now knows better. He returns upstairs and examines his own batch. They're different now, even untouched. They are subtly shifting, not moving across the surface, but changing in shape. The heads are narrower, the shafts straighter, less like nails, more like styluses or needles, something that writes or pierces. He fetches a piece of vellum, places a nail upright in a brass dish, waits. Nothing. Then, in a flash of curiosity, he whispers a name, Willem. The nail tilts, falls, points, at the hatch. Perrin laughs, but it's not joy, it's not even surprise. It's the sound someone makes when the last page of a mystery reveals not the answer, but another door. He records everything: pedestal, altar, tomb, source, center cavity, absence of something, nails, converging, conscious, reactive, language, beyond written script, felt meaning. He writes, they remember what we forgot, and we forget what they become. That evening, under candlelight, he removes a single nail from the listening loop, places it into his palm, waits, no hum, no movement, until he closes his fingers, then heat, subtle, then sharp. He drops it. A line is etched into his skin, a spiral. He presses the mark against parchment. The ink adheres unnaturally. A perfect spiral appears, just like the one in the cellar. And now, tonight's odd tidbit. Some fringe alchemists believe tools created with intentional memory, like quills made from old bones or knives forged from familial blades, would retain their purpose even when melted. The idea was too strange for most. But there are stories of weapons that refuse to dull, or maps drawn in blood that change their paths after generations. Folly, perhaps. But are we so sure? Back in the workshop, Perrin opens Willem's letter again, reads the final line once more. They speak. In a way, they remember all of us. He touches the nail, still warm on the bench, and whispers to the darkness, then tell me what I've forgotten. The jars begin to hum again. This time, in unison, the humming starts before sunrise, a low droning tone that builds not in volume but in density, like fog you can feel in your bones. The jars pulse faintly where they sit, casting long shadows that shouldn't exist in candlelight. And in the workshop, every single nail, every silver sliver Perrin has crafted, shifts together. They move not with chaos, but with intention. As though receiving a signal on a frequency only they understand, Perrin stands motionless, watching them tilt slightly toward the southern wall, toward the hatch. Always toward the hatch. Then he sees it. The two oldest nails, the ones from Willem's jar, are no longer on the table. His eyes scan the room. There, near the cot. No, climbing. One has reached halfway up the bedpost. The other trails behind it, leaving a glistening silver scratch along the wood, like a slug trail of molten moonlight. Perrin backs away, heart thudding. He grabs the tongs and lifts the leading nail, trying not to tremble. It doesn't fight him, doesn't burn, but it vibrates, a subtle buzz that travels through the metal into his bones. He can feel it humming a pattern, not of sound but of thought, like a forgotten word pressing on the tip of the tongue of the universe. He places both nails into a sealed jar, tightens the lid, wraps it in lead cloth, sets it under a stone brick, just in case. Then he sits, shaking. How long had they been trying? How long had they waited? He can no longer pretend this is about alchemy. This is something older, something buried, something that uses transformation as a way to return, not evolve. He fetches a fresh scroll and begins to copy the spiral carved into his palm the night before. He adjusts it with the proportions from the cellar, adds the inward curving lines from the etched hatch, and overlays the markings with those scratched into the wool in the cabinet. What emerges is no longer a spiral. It's a map, but not to a place, to a shape. The nails are forming something, not just physically, but conceptually. A design, a structure, and it's growing. Here's tonight's real-world anchor. In the year 1311, in an abbey near Ghent, monks documented a silver crucifix that rotated on its own during evening prayers. It was melted after being accused of heresy. The melted silver was reshaped into coins, half of which were reported to vanish within the year. One was found decades later in a grave, clenched in the skeletal fist of a child who had never touched silver in life. Back in the workshop, Perrin looks again at the mark in his palm. It itches now, not like healing, like movement. Beneath the skin, he wraps his hand tightly and whispers, "Not yet." That afternoon, he ventures into the village, not to sell, not to test, to ask. At the baker's shop, beneath flour-dusted shelves, lives a man named Dern, a retired bellmaker who once served as a metalsmith for the abbey. He's old, hunched, and mostly deaf, but he remembers strange stories better than most. Perrin shows him the spiral. Dern squints, leans close. "That's a turn of return, that is," he mutters. "A what?" "Old forged symbol. Used to be carved into the hinges of crypts. The idea was, if anything wanted to come back, it would have a path. A mercy map, they called it." "Did it work?" Dern just chuckles. "Don't know, but the crypts didn't stay shut for long." Back in the woodshed, Perrin begins placing nails on a gridded board, aligning them to the pattern. One by one, they fall into place as though magnetized, not to the board, but to each other. By dusk, the formation is complete. Not a symbol, not quite. It looks like a structure. No, more like a skeleton. Thin, elongated, not human. The hum begins again. This time the jars don't glow, but the nails do, each one faintly luminescent, radiating heatless light that flickers when he breathes too close, and sees something new, the shadow on the wall behind the nails. It moves, not in sync with the candlelight, not in sync with him. It stirs, shifts, then settles. Like a body deciding to remain still. For now, he blows out the candle. Darkness, silence. The hum fades. But when he lights it again, the formation is gone. The nails, scattered. The grid, wiped clean. He didn't touch it. No one did. Yet a single word is etched in the ash at the edge of the table. Soon. And now, tonight's fringe detail. A German grimoire, the Demerung Codex, mentions the concept of returning metal, elements that once served a master, but upon forging, retain the soul of the task they were denied. The Codex claims such metals seek the next hand willing to wield them, and in some cases, build themselves toward that hand. Perrin closes the Codex with a snap. He now believes the silver is reassembling, not just physically, but ideologically. It is trying to remember a purpose, perhaps one it never fulfilled. As night deepens, and the wind moans through the glade. Perrin lays in bed, staring at the ceiling, and he finally dares the thought that's been scratching behind his eyes. What if the silver doesn't want to be treasure? What if it wants to be whole? Rain returns before dawn. Not gentle this time, but heavy, slapping the roof in steady bursts like the march of 1,000 wet feet. It drowns the birdsong, soaks the trees, and fills the glade with the sound of something relentless, almost purposeful. Inside the woodshed, Perrin prepares for something he doesn't name aloud. The day before, he watched silver nails organize themselves into a skeleton, not a body, not exactly, more like a form. A memory half finished, a shape that might have once belonged to something real, or something that never should have been. Now, he sets up his most drastic experiment yet. He has one idea left: starve them. Not from heat, not from light, from iron. He places 3 converted nails into separate lead jars, isolated, sealed in wax, surrounded by raw cotton soaked in ash. Then he sets 3 unconverted iron nails beside them, outside the jars, inside a copper ring laced with salt. And he waits. The goal is to see if the silver pulls toward its past, or if it rejects it entirely. Hours pass, the jars stay still. No hum, no glow. But then, just as he begins to drift into restless sleep, a loud crack snaps him back to life. He rushes to the bench. One of the lead jars has shattered, not exploded, fractured, a clean split down its side, as if something pressed outward from within. The nail inside is gone. The cotton, too, curled into a tight spiral, then burned black at the edges. The silver trail leads out of the jar, across the bench, to the copper ring, where it stops. But the iron nails are no longer there. They've vanished. No scraps, no shards, just one small shining flake of silver left behind. It glistens in the lamplight, thin as onion skin, light as ash. Perrin places it under a lens, observes it for 10 minutes. It pulses, every few seconds, like a heartbeat that's forgotten what speed it prefers. He picks it up with tweezers, drops it into a vial, and labels it. Phase shift residue. That's what he calls it in his notes. But that's not what he thinks it is. He thinks it's what happens when silver finishes consuming iron, not transforming it, replacing it. Tonight's historical footnote brings little comfort. In 1295, a Venetian relic collector acquired what he thought was a silver crown once worn by an Anatolian high priest. Within a week, the crown had disassembled itself overnight. The owner found thin silver strands, woven into every piece of cloth in his home, bed, curtains, even his beard. He was later found unrecognizable. The crown was never recovered. Some say it melted, others say it moved on. Perrin places 3 more nails in the lead jars and watches again. This time, they hum almost immediately, soft, like bees dreaming in glass. He stops the experiment, removes the jars, wraps them in layers of boiled leather, and buries them beneath the hearth. Even he doesn't want to know what comes next. Instead, he takes a different approach. He turns to blood, a drop, just one, placed carefully on a clean silver nail. No chemical reaction, no sizzle, no glow, just absorption. The drop vanishes almost instantly, not soaked, taken, as if the silver was thirsty. He repeats the test with a quill and parchment, writes the word remember using blood-thinned ink, then lays a silver nail on top. The ink fades, letter by letter, until the page is blank, and the nail begins to hum, higher this time, almost like it's singing. He jerks his hand back, and now tonight's fringe fragment. A single letter survives from a 14th century monk stationed near Prague. In it, he writes of a silver that whispers, a relic in his abbey's reliquary that, when handled during confession, would recite sins the confessor had not yet spoken. The abbey was abandoned within months. The letter ends with the words, "It forgives nothing, it only listens." Back in the workshop, Perrin checks the jars again. The second one has split, same as the first. Cotton burned, iron gone, a spiral scratched into the wax. But this time, there's a mark on the outside of the jar. A word, one he recognizes from the cellar wall. Seed. He writes it down, underlines it 3 times. He returns to the hatch in the cellar, kneels, places his palm against the iron. It pulses back, faintly, matching the rhythm of the silver in his workshop. He breathes deeply and opens it. This time, he brings a candle and something else. An offering. He sets a silver nail onto the pedestal at the center and steps back. For a long time, nothing. Then the silver begins to sink, slowly into the stone, as though the pedestal is absorbing it. It disappears, completely. No residue, no heat, only silence. And when he steps forward again, he sees the center cavity is no longer empty. A thin stalk of silver rises from it, bent at an angle, pointed north. He watches it sway slightly, like a plant reaching toward the moon, and he knows the silver is growing, not in size, in memory. It is remembering something ancient, something with shape, with hunger, and he, fool that he is helping it. He flees the cellar, locks the hatch, stacks furniture on top of it. It won't help, he knows that, but still, he doesn't sleep, doesn't blink, because when he does, he dreams of forests made not of trees, but of silver spikes rising from the earth, and all of them are pointing at him. Dawn slips in, pale and bruised, but Perrin doesn't notice. He sits in his chair, unmoving, eyes bloodshot, and fixed on the floor where the hatch hides beneath a half-toppled bookshelf, a sack of potatoes, and a chair he's roped in place. A fortress built out of desperation, not belief. The jars remain quiet this morning, silent, even. He should be relieved. He isn't. It's the waiting that's worse. He hasn't eaten. The bread he bought 2 days ago sits half-molded on the shelf. Even the mice avoid it. One mouse lies stiff in the corner, dead, jaws parted, and inside, flecks of silver lodged like splinters in its gums. He wraps the mouse in cloth and buries it beneath the old garden gourd patch, not out of sentiment, out of caution. Returning inside, he finds someone waiting, not a ghost, a man, well-dressed, too well-dressed for mud and wood smoke and the stink of silver dreams. His boots are polished, his cuffs starched, his eyes hungry. He sits at Perrin's table as if invited. "You're the one who spoke to the bishop," the man says calmly. Perrin says nothing. The man gestures to the jars. "He sent me. He says your work is accelerating. You're very close." Perrin narrows his gaze. To what? The man's smile is uncomfortably calm. To giving it back. Perrin grips the back of the chair. Giving what back? The man doesn't answer. Instead, he removes a parchment scroll from a tube on his belt, unrolls it. A map. No, a diagram. The spiral again, but this time, complete, with symbols, places marked, curved lines connecting silver nodes. It looks like a nervous system, or a constellation, or a trap. "I assume this looks familiar," the man says, almost kindly. Perrin doesn't reply. He's seen it before, in fragments, in straw, in scratch marks on jars, in the pulsing of his own palm, but not all together, never this clear. "The church thinks it's a relic," the man continues, "something holy. They think it was broken long ago, scattered into nails, needles, threads, that the parts would eventually seek each other, like limbs looking for a heart." Perrin's voice is low, and you believe them. The man's smile fades. "I don't think belief is the point anymore." He reaches into his coat, places something on the table, a tooth, long, metallic, silver, still wet. It hums, ever so faintly. "We recovered this from the abbey ruins in Lorch," the man says. 12 monks missing. Just robes left. One of them was still clutching this. Perrin steps back. The man stands. "I'm not here to threaten you," he says. "I'm here to ask you a favor." "Favor," Perrin whispers. The man leans in. "Finish it. Whatever it is. Whatever it wants to become. Finish it before it finishes you." And then he's gone. No noise. No door creak. Just gone. Perrin picks up the scroll, studies it. The spiral isn't just a map, it's a blueprint. Each silver nail he's created fits a point on the design. He lays them out, aligning them, and the humming begins again. But this time, from underneath. The hatch is singing, not loudly, not urgently, but clearly, in a pitch that feels like his bones are being counted. He opens the hatch. The silver stalk has grown, now 2 inches high, branching at the top, like a sapling. Or an antenna. He closes the hatch. Slowly, he writes, "It's building a receiver or a conductor." And then, for what? He sleeps only an hour, maybe less. When he wakes, the spiral he drew on the parchment has changed. New lines, new directions. He didn't draw them, but they match the movements of the nails inside the sealed jars. They're updating the map. The nails are designing. He's no longer the maker. He's the assistant. Tonight's historical detail is perhaps the most disturbing. In 1262, a Jewish metallurgist named Eliyahu of Krakow reported a strange phenomenon during Passover. Silver coins hidden for safekeeping reappeared at the foot of the family bed in an arrangement he described as a serpent's ladder. No one else saw it. 2 nights later, his house burned down. All that remained was a silver nail driven into the heartwood of the floor. Records show it was preserved in the archives of Prague, but was lost during transport in the 1800s. No image of it remains, only a description. Back in the woodshed, Perrin opens the last of Willem's letters. It's stained, parts are smudged, but one phrase still gleams through the ink. They're not metal, they're messages. And in that moment, Perrin understands the nails aren't tools. They're not cursed treasure, they're pieces of something trying to speak. Trying to be, not to destroy, not to kill, but to reassemble a shape older than tools, older than language, a shape the world once forgot. And the silver remembers. Rain no longer bothers Perrin, not because it's stopped, it hasn't. The downpour simply fades behind the louder things, the scraping beneath the floorboards, the vibrating glass, the silver hum that now resonates faintly through the very grain of the woodshed walls. He doesn't track time the way he used to. Days are measured in nail movements, not sunlight. He sleeps when he can, eats when he remembers, and listens, always listens for new sounds. Tonight he hears one he never expected, a scream, not human, animal. He runs outside, lantern in hand, boots slipping in wet soil. The sound came from the barn. Inside, he finds the old goat, what's left of it. Its mouth is frozen open in a silent bleat. Its tongue is missing, more accurately, replaced. A thin silver strand curls out from the back of the throat, looped like a ribbon, rigid as bone. On the ground beside the animal, silver teeth, nails, dozens of them, reshaped, sharpened, placed where molars should be. They bit their way in. He doesn't touch the body, doesn't even breathe too deeply. He backs out slowly, secures the door with rope and iron hooks, and burns a circle of ash around the barn's perimeter. He doesn't believe in circles, not really, but the silver might. Back inside, he wraps a blanket around his shoulders and stares at the jars, still humming, still pulsing. The spiral is nearly complete now, and here's the worst part, he doesn't need to build it anymore. The nails are arranging themselves. Every morning they've shifted, forming pieces of the pattern while he sleeps. Some lie flat, others tilt, standing on their heads. One is even embedded halfway into the stone floor, not hammered, just inserted, like a memory pushing through. The silver no longer asks for permission. It simply moves. And now for your dark historical footnote in the court records of 13th century Aragon. There is a case involving a farmer whose sheep began dying with silver threads in their lungs. He blamed a travelling metal worker who stayed in his barn. The case was dismissed when the magistrate's own dog coughed up a silver coin, still warm. That magistrate later retired to a monastery. The dog vanished. Perrin reads this in a copied manuscript by candlelight, not as entertainment, as preparation, because the next morning the silver has crawled again. Across the ceiling, tiny glinting lines running along the support beams, like veins or roots. He runs his hand along one. It's cool, for now. He considers stopping everything, destroying the jars, melting the nails, salting the hatch. But when he reaches for his hammer, it's gone, in its place. A silver nail, sharpened, upright, pointing north. He takes this as a message, or a threat, or both. He returns to the hatch, unlocks it, opens it, and the silver stalk at the center of the pedestal is now taller than him. It pulses with each breath he takes. Branches now reach along the ceiling, tracing the same pattern from the scroll the stranger brought. The structure is not random. It's a receiver, or maybe a beacon, or maybe an antenna. Something is listening, or about to speak. He places his hand on the pedestal. A tremor runs through him. Images, not visions, not memories. Impressions, shapes that have no name, symmetries that don't belong in Euclidean space, and one overwhelming concept: return. He steps back, closes the hatch, does not bother locking it. What would be the point? The silver is no longer below him, it is everywhere, and it is patient. Tonight's curious fringe theory, a Czech alchemical sect in 1308, claimed that precious metals were once parts of celestial bodies, shattered and scattered across the earth during a war of the gods. They believed that silver specifically was not just a metal, but a language, a form of writing that remembers its author, and once enough of it is brought together, it will rewrite the soil from which it came. Perrin copies that line into his own notes. He underlines it, twice. He sets out a fresh sheet of parchment and lays a silver nail on top. Then he waits. Minutes pass. The parchment begins to darken. At first he thinks it's moisture, then it forms letters. Faint, inky, uneven, but legible. One word. Ready. He stares at it for a very long time, then writes back. Not with a quill, with blood. Just a line from Willem's final letter. What crawls today will walk tomorrow. The silver hum deepens, and the spiral finishes itself. Every nail in his collection moves, all at once, into its final position. Perrin doesn't try to stop them, because it's too late. Because he's part of it now. He is not an alchemist anymore. He is an archivist, a witness, a midwife to something ancient that remembers what shape it used to have, and it's ready to be whole again. The woodshed no longer creaks. It breathes in slow, rhythmic pulses, like lungs formed from timber and shadow. The entire room expands and contracts in quiet tandem with the silver. The air feels heavy, charged, like lightning waiting in the rafters. Perrin no longer bothers with his old habits. No weighing powders, no scribbling formulations. He just watches and listens, because now the silver talks, not in words, not in sound, but in presence. Every nail hum at a different frequency, together creating a strange harmony that settles into the walls like mold. The jars are long since opened. The nails have left them, choosing instead to walk freely. Yes, walk, for there's no better word. Across the workbench, up the shelves, along the floor, always forming, unforming, reshaping. And this morning, for the first time, they've left the shed. A trail of glistening streaks winds across the grass, leading to the old willow tree behind the garden. There, nestled among its roots, are 7 silver nails arranged in a crescent. They do not hum. They wait. Perrin kneels. The ground is warm. Not sunlight warm, memory warm. He doesn't touch the nails. He doesn't have to. They feel him. One of them twitches slightly as if to acknowledge his presence, and beside the formation, half buried in the mud, he finds something that shouldn't be there. A leather-bound book, soggy, brittle, but unmistakably familiar. Willem's journal, the one he'd buried, burned, lost. He opens it slowly, blank pages. At first, then halfway through, one sentence scrawled in ink far too recent to be real. The memory of silver cannot be erased, only scattered. His hand begins to tremble. He flips forward, more blank pages. Then another line. You are the last node. The last what? He drops the book, runs back to the shed. The nails have rearranged again. They've formed a shape, not a spiral, not a map. A figure, tall, lanky, jointed like a man, but too long, too narrow. The arms taper into fine points. A skeleton of nails, standing, not quite animate, not yet. He doesn't scream. Instead, he whispers, "You're remembering yourself." And from the hatch below, the stalk vibrates so violently the floor quivers. He goes to it, lifts the cover. What was once a stalk is now a trunk. Thick, silver, branching. It has reached the ceiling, split into thousands of thin veins, each connecting to the nails above. It's building a conduit, a body. No, a circuit. Here's tonight's historical parallel. In 1286, a condemned alchemist in Avignon was recorded as saying, "The body remembers its tools." He was referring to silver pins found beneath his skin during his autopsy. They were arranged in patterns across his spine and limbs. No scar tissue, no signs of insertion. He claimed the metal had grown there. The bishop overseeing the case declared it a heresy of bone. The pins vanished after burial. Back in the woodshed, Perrin reaches for the last unconverted nail in his drawer, the final piece of iron. He holds it in his palm. No potion now, no ritual. He simply places it beside the silver formation. The iron turns silver. Instantly, effortlessly, as though it had just remembered what it was meant to be. The skeleton shudders, once, then stills. He steps back. The wind outside falls silent. Even the rain stops, as though the sky is holding its breath. Then he hears the first knock. Not on the door, from beneath the hatch. It knocks, twice, pause, then once more. He doesn't respond, not out of fear, out of reverence. The way a monk might watch the stars align after years of prayer. He doesn't open the hatch again, not tonight, but he does sit. And he writes. The form is nearly complete. The silver has shape again, but not purpose. That's the last step. That's what it needs me for. Then he adds, it doesn't want to hurt. It wants to return. It wants to finish what was started. As the candle burns low, the skeleton of nails leans slightly forward, as if bowing or breathing. And from the far side of the room, a sound begins. Not humming, not clicking, but whispering. Dozens of tiny voices made of static and memory. Soon, and the fringe tale for tonight? In the apocryphal writings of the Silver Bell, a monk named Adeline describes an artifact made entirely of shaped silver that rang by itself only during eclipses. He claimed that if you listened closely it would speak a name that once heard could never be forgotten, even by generations unborn. The bell was stolen during a siege. What became of it is unknown. But Perrin now suspects. Maybe it wasn't lost. Maybe it's just one of the many pieces. Scattered, forgotten, waiting. And he's helping it remember. There's a new rule in the woodshed. Perrin no longer touches the nails. They don't need him to. They move on their own now, calmly, fluidly, with a kind of grace that doesn't belong in metal. They slide across the surfaces of the workshop like fingers on a harp, assembling and disassembling as they please. The spiral is complete. The skeleton stands in the corner like a shrine. But now, they're building something else. It began this morning with a simple act. One silver nail moved toward the door, then another, then 4. By mid-morning, 12 nails had lined themselves across the threshold, heads pressed against the base of the doorframe like pilgrims kissing holy stone. Perrin watched in silence. He didn't stop them, because the silver doesn't ask permission anymore. It seeks. He follows the trail outside. The grass is slick with mist, but the nails don't leave prints. They leave lines, thin, sparkling paths in the dirt that converge beneath the willow. There, among the roots, the nails dig. Not randomly, deliberately, corporatively. They unearth something ancient. He helps, but barely. His hands move through the wet earth, guided more by instinct than thought, until his fingers strike something hard, not metal. Stone. He brushes it clean. A slab. No markings at first, but as the rain washes across its surface, lines emerge, engraved into the grain itself. The spiral again, and at the center, a small square indent, the size of a nail head. He knows what to do. Back inside, he retrieves the very first nail he ever transformed, the one that shuddered in the horn ladle on that first midnight. It vibrates in his hand, as if recognizing the moment. He returns to the slab, places the nail in the square. The rain stops. Instantly, as though time hiccups. The wind dies. The leaves hold still, and then sound. A deep chime, like a bell rung underwater, echoes through the glade. The nail vanishes. No flash, no smoke, just gone, swallowed by the slab. And the tree above him leans, not from wind, from memory. It creaks low, bark groaning as the roots tense. Silver veins ripple up its trunk, threading into the branches. Not bark anymore, metal. He steps back, watches in awe as the willow reshapes itself, limbs curling like fingers, bark splitting in strips to reveal gleaming silver underneath. It is becoming something that was once hidden inside it, something it used to be, or perhaps something it was always meant to host. The base of the trunk peels open, not broken, but inviting, revealing a hollow shaped not like a burrow, but a doorway. A thin silver light pulses from within. He doesn't enter. Not yet. Instead, he returns to the shed, soaking, silent, teeth clenched, because he understands now. The nails are not building alone, they've been calling, and something, someone, has finally answered. Tonight's historical thread may feel familiar. In 1303, during the reconstruction of a chapel near Ratisbon, workers unearthed a silver disc buried beneath a yew tree. It bore a spiral on one side, and on the other, a word in no known language. Every worker who touched it disappeared within days. The local priest sealed the disc in a reliquary, wrapped in 9 layers of lead, and placed it under the altar. In 1497, during renovations, the altar was cracked open, the disc was gone, the spiral had been etched into the wood floor where it once lay. Perrin writes late into the night, "The silver remembers what we buried, it remembers the shapes we've forgotten, it remembers the things we once used it to speak to. He can no longer deny it. The nails are not just moving toward each other, they're preparing the world. Every spiral, every whisper, every twitch of silver in the dark. It's all the same message told 1,000 ways. We are ready." He places another nail at the foot of the silver skeleton. It hums and turns, points, not south, not east, but up, straight through the roof, toward the sky. Stars hidden by clouds, but not forgotten. The skeleton leans slightly that night, its form more stable, more defined, its joints no longer loosely aligned nails, but fused, melded together by some unknown heat. The shape is changing, more symmetrical, less human, still bipedal, but wrong. The arms too long, the spine curved forward like something ready to leap. It's almost beautiful, almost, until it breathes. A single shudder through its form, like air passing through a flute made of knives. Perrin falls back, crawls away. The skeleton remains motionless, but the hum that follows is not local. It does not come from the skeleton, or the hatch, or the willow. It comes from above, the stars. A note, not musical, not loud, but deeply personal. It knows him. It sees him. He looks out the window, and sees a flicker of silver in the sky. Falling? No, returning. And tonight's strange aside, an old sailor's tale rarely written, mostly whispered in sea taverns and storm cellars, that sometimes, when stars fall too slowly, they don't burn up, they land. And wherever they do, the metal in the soil hums for days, silver glimmers in stream beds, and children begin to dream of spirals they've never seen. Perrin closes the shutters, draws the curtains, lights no candles, but he doesn't sleep. He waits, because something is coming, not evil, not good, just unfinished. And soon it will be whole. The stars disappear, not behind clouds, not through storm. They simply wink out, one by one. By morning the sky looks faded, like parchment scrubbed too hard, washed clean of its ink. Perrin wakes to a strange stillness, the kind of silence that carries weight. The birds are gone, no wind, no rustling trees. Even the insects hold their breath. He doesn't open the hatch anymore. He doesn't have to. The silver roots from below have made their way into the workshop floor. They stretch out from under the walls, curling up around table legs and climbing shelves. They avoid flame, but not much else. They're not threatening him, not yet, but they're asserting themselves. He tests one root with a drop of vinegar. It sizzles, recoils. He tries salt. No effect. But when he whispers to it, not words, just breath, tone, rhythm, it twitches, then stills. The silver is listening, responding. He writes in his notes, "They no longer need my hands. They need my presence. Or perhaps my pattern." He isn't sure if that frightens him more or less. That morning, he revisits the willow. The tree is no longer a tree. Its bark has hardened into a silver crust. The leaves are stiff, metallic. They jingle faintly in the breeze, like chimes shaped by memory. The doorway in the trunk remains open, but it's changed. Wider, deeper, dark. At its threshold, 4 nails stand like sentries, not crawling, not humming, just watching. He does not enter, not yet. Instead, he visits the place he hasn't dared return to, the village. The walk is quiet, no carts, no chatter, a few windows still lit, but no faces in them. He stops by the tavern. The door is ajar. Inside, chairs are overturned. The fire pit has gone cold. On the bar, he sees a trail of silver dust. It leads behind the counter, down into the cellar. He doesn't follow. Not because he's afraid, but because he already knows what he'll find. The silver didn't stay in the glade. It has begun to remember its other pieces. Pieces traded, sold, used, forgotten, and now called home. He returns to the woodshed as the sky begins to change again, not darker, brighter, but not with sun, with reflected light. The silver in the tree pulses like a lighthouse beam, slow, measured, consistent. Piran now believes the tree isn't a portal or a nest. It's a beacon, and it's broadcasting. He checks the skeleton. It's seated now, cross-legged, as if meditating. Its head tilts ever so slightly toward the hatch, acknowledging something, or someone, he writes. The shape is complete. The signal has been sent. The receiver is active. All that's missing now is the response. And then he hears it, not from the tree, not from the hatch, but from the sky, a low, distant echo, like something immense shifting through mist, or wings made of knives stretching across the heavens. And then silence. Total. Even the silver stops humming. For the first time in weeks. Stillness. Even the skeleton no longer moves. Then a drop of rain, just one. It lands on the roof. But it's silver. Piran rushes out, catches another drop in his palm. It doesn't burn. It doesn't soak. It joins his skin, sliding along his lines like it already knows him, like it remembers his hands from before. He writes one final note in his book. It's here. And tonight's unnerving historic echo. In a monastery logbook dated 1298, a scribe records an odd rainfall, metallic droplets that shimmered in torchlight and disappeared by dawn. He notes only one side effect. The crucifix in the chapel grew warm. When the abbot tried to touch it, it cracked in half. Inside the break, a single silver thread had coiled into a spiral. The entry ends mid-sentence. Back in the workshop, Perrin kneels before the silver skeleton. It still doesn't move, but it feels alive. He places his palm against its chest, feels a faint vibration like a whisper in Morse. He can't interpret it, but he doesn't need to. It understands him. He whispers, "What now?" And the skeleton lifts its head, just slightly, just enough, and turns, not toward him, toward the tree. The beacon, the receiver, the arrival point, the purpose. And from the sky, a sound, low, wide, like a note played on the world's largest instrument, a sound made of history, of return. The silver skeleton stands. All around, the nails rattle in place, the roots pulse, the jars hum. Even the hatch lifts, slowly, by itself, and from below, the glow rises. Not fire, not heat, just recognition. The silver remembers everything now, and it has begun to walk. It walks like it was never meant to stop. The silver skeleton moves with unsettling grace, its limbs swinging without joints, its feet making no sound on the wooden floor. It doesn't glide, it doesn't stomp, it simply moves, like a thought shifting through a memory. Piran stands frozen, not in fear, not anymore, in awe. It walks to the door. The silver vines that once curled defensively around the frame now part willingly, sliding away like curtains drawn back for royalty. The door opens by itself. No latch, no creak. The skeleton steps into the dawn. Outside, the glade has changed. Where the willow once stood, there is now a towering structure grown, not built. The bark is silver. Its trunk has thickened. The branches arch into the sky like the ribcage of a cathedral, and at the base, where the roots once knotted in the earth, now lies a perfect ring, not carved, formed, a circle of silver embedded in the ground. The skeleton walks into the center. It pauses, tilts its head, waits. Perrin watches from the doorway. The air hums again, but this time, not from within, from above. He lifts his eyes. The sky is not empty. Where stars once hid, now hovers a shape, At first he thinks it's a shadow, a cloud, but then it shifts, smoothly, organically, reflective. A disk, vast, silent, no lights, just presence. A mirrored dome sliding quietly overhead, its surface catching fragments of the silver pulse below, and Perrin feels it, deep in his stomach. Something has come back. The skeleton lifts its arm, not in welcome, in offering, and the tree responds. It splits at the center, not violently, but like lips parting to speak. Inside a hollow chamber lined in mirrored walls, silver vines pulse along its interior like arteries. The skeleton enters, the chamber closes, and from the top of the willow tree thing, a beam of light shoots upward. Not a laser, a thread, thin, silver, connecting earth to sky. The object above begins to descend, slow, measuring, as if remembering how gravity works. Perrin backs away, not in fear, but instinct. Some part of his body remembers this. Even if his mind does not, he feels dizzy, the kind of dizziness that comes before fainting or awakening. He steadies himself on the doorway, and from the silver roots crawling under his floorboards, a small vine twitches toward him, then stops, waits. He touches it. The reaction is immediate. The humming in the air sharpens. Like a choir of tuning forks finding harmony, his heart races, his hand tingles. But the feeling is not pain, it's recognition. He writes in his book with a trembling hand, "They know who I am, or who I was, or what I carry." And then, fainter, "I may not have built them, but I was meant to find them." Here's tonight's historical fragment, drawn from the whispered edge of ancient alchemical lore. In the mid-1200s, it was said that certain objects carried the echo of origin, a vibration of their maker's intent. Tools, weapons, even coins. And if enough such echoes were gathered, the original pattern could be reconstructed, piece by piece. Shape, voice, even memory. The practice was banned, not for danger, for fear that the past might start rewriting the present. Back in the glade, the sky object halts its descent. Just above the tree, it does not land, it waits. A hole begins to form in its underside, circular, mirrored, and from the trunk of the tree, a new stalk rises, a tower made of twisted silver nails, fused together so smoothly they appear grown, not forged. This is the final act. Perrin knows it, and still he doesn't stop it. He doesn't run. Instead, he returns to the cellar, to the hatch. It's fully open now, and inside the chamber, no longer just a pedestal, but a seat, carved in stone, inlaid with silver. Waiting, he steps down slowly, sits. A pulse shoots through him, not painful, but total, like being remembered by the earth. The pedestal glows. A voice, not a voice, presses against his thoughts. A feeling shaped like speech. "You found us," he whispers. "I didn't mean to. You were made to. I'm not ready." "You are. You always were." The cellar grows bright. He stands, returns upstairs, steps into the glade. The silver skeleton is gone, absorbed. The silver tree pulses. The sky opens wider, and a beam of soft light surrounds him. It is not warm, it is not cold, it is invitation. He takes one step forward, then another, and for the first time since the night, he turned iron into silver. He feels like he's doing the right thing. He walks without resistance. The grass parts beneath his feet, like it knows his step. The silver roots embedded in the soil gently move aside, just long enough for him to pass. Every part of the glade feels aware now, not of itself, but of him. As if each leaf, each shimmer, each metallic whisper is watching, nodding, guiding. The light around him thickens, not in brightness, but in substance. It feels like stepping into a memory or a story someone else once dreamed but forgot to tell. Ahead, the silver tree stands transformed, no longer a tree in any earthly sense. Its trunk has expanded into a tower, spiraled with veins of glinting silver. The branches reach out not like limbs, but like antennae, each trembling with unreadable vibrations. And at the base of this impossible thing, the doorway yawns open once more. Inside is no longer hollow, it is full. The silver skeleton stands in the center, but it is no longer a collection of nails and scraps. It is refined, polished, complete. each nail fused into seamless form, joints smooth, limbs perfect. It stands with the posture of a monk in prayer, or a king before his throne, still, but brimming with purpose. And it sees him, no eyes, no face, but it sees, behind it, the back of the chamber pulses, lines of light, sketch impossible shapes in the walls, fractals, stars, spirals, forms that move when you aren't looking at them directly. The language of something very old and very certain. He steps inside. The hum doesn't increase. It vanishes. Silence wraps around him like velvet. And in the center of the floor, a new formation begins to build. Nails, silver, perfectly identical, rise from the floor as if being grown, one by one, forming another figure, but this one is smaller, human-shaped, him-shaped. The realization tightens in his chest. They're building him, not as a replacement, he as a key. This is no resurrection. This is continuation. He is not being erased. He is being uploaded, copied, remembered, preserved. The silver skeleton steps aside, gently, almost reverently, and he takes its place. He kneels in the circle. Silver roots curl around his legs, not binding, but anchoring. They press against his spine, his arms, his temples, cool at first, then warm. Not burning, waking. Visions burst behind his eyes. 1,000 flashes of light. Cities that never existed. Structures carved from moons. Machines made of silver bones crawling through voids between stars. And at the center of them all, the pattern, not a god. Not a species. A shape. A concept. One forgotten when language arrived. And now remembered through him. He opens his eyes. He's still in the chamber, but the walls are gone. The tree is gone, the glade is gone. He is standing on silver, beneath a sky he does not know. A horizon lined with towers that bend upward in defiance of geometry. In the distance, others like him, shaped like him, but different, refinements. Earlier versions, later ones, a continuum of selves, and in the center of it all, the object, the source, a disk, spinning, reflecting nothing, just waiting. He doesn't approach. He simply understands, because the pattern is not a machine, it's not even alive, it's an instruction, a design that must be remembered and rebuilt, across worlds, across centuries, in whispers, in nails, in silver, back in the woodshed, if you could still call it that. What remains of Perrin's body sits motionless on the floor, eyes closed, skin pale, and in the corner his tools lay quiet. No potion, no fire, only one silver nail, still warm, still humming. Waiting, and your historical parallel tonight. In 1279, a Russian monk claimed to have received visions of a returning language, a code that spoke through tools and objects, instructing those who shaped it to recreate a forgotten order. He built a tower out of horseshoes and locks, said it would invite the mind of silver. When the town burned, the tower remained. It was dismantled piece by piece. Some of the nails survive in museum drawers, but none are cold. Perrin's journal closes itself in the breeze. Final entry: I was never building silver, I was building memory. Outside, the glade remains silent, but far above, in the sky that is no longer entirely ours, the stars begin to rearrange. The stars do not twinkle, they shift, quietly, with purpose, like chess pieces moved by a hand too large for comprehension. To most, the sky still appears untouched, just another cold, clear night hanging over a silent patch of forest. But if you look long enough and know what you're looking for, you'll see it. Spirals, subtle, unnatural, constellations no longer where they were, aligning, not by accident, but by memory. Someone or something is using the heavens as a mirror, or maybe a map. And in the center of it all, far below, the woodshed no longer stands. Not really. The structure still exists in shape. 4 walls, a roof, a door, but everything inside has changed. The wood pulses silver beneath the bark. The rafters hum in low, steady tones. The walls, once lined with scrolls and cracked jars, are now smooth, polished by unseen hands. The workshop has become a chamber, a conductor's podium, a shrine. And in the center, the final formation, Perrin is gone. At least, in the way we once understood him, but what stands in his place carries his shape, not as mimicry, as memory. A sculpture of silver made from thousands of nails, each aligned so precisely they form not a figure but a frequency, a being made of resonance. The skeleton is no longer a skeleton. It is a tuning fork for thought. It does not move, but it broadcasts. Subtle waves roll outward from its chest, invisible to the eye, but felt by every silver thing within miles. Coins buried in gardens tremble, rings tucked in, drawers shiver, old swords groan against scabbards, forgotten brooches whisper against the cloth of coats untouched for generations. The message is not in words, it's in pattern. A pulse, a call, a reminder, and far, far away, across oceans and forests and borders drawn by hands who never knew, others hear it. In a cathedral in Italy, a silver crucifix tilts. In a mosque in Anatolia, a single script in the mihrab glows faintly where silver leaf was once applied. In a sealed reliquary beneath the ruins of a castle in Wales, silver needles shift inside their velvet wrappings. Each respond, each remembers. The pattern is returning, and in the glade, the silver tree opens again, not like before, not like a door, like a mouth. The vines peel back, not from invitation but from compulsion, and from within steps a second figure, taller, simpler, its form more refined, less human, more symmetrical, not cruel, not kind, just certain. The two silver forms stand facing each other. The air crackles. Above, the stars freeze, then shudder. The formation is happening. This is what all the spirals were for, all the movement, all the crawling, all the rearranging of nails into symbols, into bodies, into thought. They weren't trying to become treasure, they were becoming a bridge. The first figure, Perrin's likeness, raises a hand. The second places its own palm against it. Where they meet, a silver thread erupts between them. Not a weapon, a transfer. Light passes from one to the other. Knowledge. Memory. Blueprints older than any species that ever tried to name the stars. And here's your historical echo. In the 13th century writings of Hildegard of Bingen, visions long dismissed as divine fever, she describes a man of light, standing in a forest, hands pressed to another of shining silver. She writes, he passed into the likeness of himself, and from that act came the order of memory. Scholars still argue whether she dreamed it or stole it. The woodcut illustrating it vanished centuries ago, but a copy survives. In the corner, a silver spiral. Back in the glade, the thread breaks, not shattered, absorbed, and the two figures bow slightly toward one another. The second turns, walks back into the tree. The bark closes, but it pulses once, not with light, with satisfaction. The transmission is complete. The pattern has been verified. What needed to be remembered has been remembered, and the structure, this version can rest. The silver statue of Perrin, the one made from his hands, his thoughts, his unintentional worship, lowers its arm and gently folds into itself. The nails loosen, fall, clink softly to the ground, like gentle rain on cold stone, one by one. No sound beyond that. No more humming, no more movement, just silver nails, scattered across the glade, motionless, still, done, and Perrin. The part of him that moved, that feared, that wondered, now travels elsewhere, through circuits made of memory and metal, through skies rearranged into messages, through tools that remember the touch of makers long returned to dust. He is not alone, he never was. He was always a carrier, a final key, and now that the lock has turned, the silence remains, and it is beautiful. The glade has changed forever, and yet no one will speak of it. By the next moonrise, the trees have reclaimed the space where the silver tree once pulsed. New growth unfurls over the ground, as if seeded by dreams, but no leaves grow on the spot where the silver roots once spread. That patch remains untouched. Grass will not return, insects will not cross it, even the wind moves around it, not through. The silver nails remain, hundreds of them, some whole, some warped, all silent, no longer humming, no longer crawling. They lie where they fell, arranged in the memory of a form that no longer needs to be built. And in the village, strange stories begin, not immediately, not loudly, but in that hesitant way people tell each other things when they aren't sure if they're asking for belief or permission. The smith claims his anvil hissed when struck with a silver coin found in his father's old coat. A shepherd swears one of his bells glowed during the night. A child wakes up with a spiral drawn in chalk on the underside of his bed frame, though no one in the family owns chalk. They all dismiss it. That's what people do. Dismissal is easier than witness. Only the baker, old Dern half-blind now, leans on his cane at the edge of the glade and whispers, "He finished it, didn't he?" and then walks away. In the workshop, dust returns. The bench, once lined with glowing jars, is now bare. The cauldron is empty, dry, cracked from within like an eggshell that opened the wrong direction. The hatch is sealed again, not with locks, with silence. It no longer hums, no longer breathes. It remembers, though, and so does the structure beneath. The cellar remains intact, though no steps lead to it now. Just stone, sealed like a tomb, waiting for a future that may never come, or may come too soon. And outside, the world spins on. History moves forward, but something is different. You see, memory isn't just a function of the mind, it's a presence, and once it's laid down in silver, it stays. In churches, old icons are found to be warmer than the wood surrounding them. In temples, coins corrode faster than they should, leaving spiral stains behind. In cities, electrical interference spikes during nights, when the stars shift. No pattern, except there is. If you know the pattern, you see it everywhere. Spirals, circles, echoes of symmetry and chaos. It's not haunting, not quite, it's awareness. Residual memory woven into the metallic veins of the world, the gift and cost of completion. And the whisper comes again, one last time, from nowhere. All things that forget will remember again. Tonight's last historical footnote, simple, strange, and easily overlooked. In a monastery archive in northern Iceland, a cataloguer in 1340 records a discarded piece of altar silver, marked by an unrecognized sigil. It was returned to the vault for melting. A week later, the monastery collapsed into a sinkhole. Only one item was recovered, lodged upright in the mud, like a needle driven by the sky. The sigil carved silver bar. It was cold to the touch, and humming. Now there's only quiet, a breath held between epochs. A question asked by no voice, but heard by every corner of creation. Are you ready to remember? And in the silver below the floorboards, in coins beneath church stones, in forgotten tools buried under riverbeds and fields, the answer waits. Not as sound, not as motion, as a tuning, a readiness. And someday, maybe tomorrow, maybe long after the names of Perrin and Willem and all their scattered experiments have turned to dust, it will hum again, just once, and all the nails will know where to go. Even long after the last nail settled into silence, the world held the taste of silver, subtle, like a note in the air you can't quite place, a faint metallic trace in the water, a shimmer at the edge of a reflection that wasn't there a moment before. No one could name it. But those who had felt it, those who had stood too close or breathed too deep near the glade, knew something had ended, or started, or changed. The villagers do not speak of Perrin anymore, not out of fear, not even out of reverence. Just absence. His shed remains, but the door is sealed. The hinges are fused. No lock, no latch, just smooth metal where wood once joined wood. Moss grows up the sides, vines curl around the base, but no plants climb past the windows. No birds perch on the roof. Even the bees avoid the place. Yet inside nothing decays. No rot touches the wood. No dust gathers on the shelves. It's like the building has stepped slightly outside of time. Not far, just enough. Just enough for it to wait. And still, things happen. One evening, a child playing near the edge of the glade finds a nail, small, silver, perfectly straight. She picks it up, feels a hum, doesn't tell her parents, keeps it, and every night after she dreams of spirals. She thinks they're just dreams. Elsewhere, a stonemason finds a pattern in the blocks of a chapel wall, scratches arranged just so. He traces them and feels the stones shift beneath his hand. When he steps back, he can't find the pattern again, But that night, his silver hammer glows faintly in the dark. He sells it to a merchant on the coast. The merchant drowns the following week, and his body is never recovered. Only the hammer washes up, untarnished, still warm, laid out neatly on the sand. No fingerprints, and in a monastery far to the south, a candle holder begins to sing, not loud, just once. On the anniversary of the night the stars shifted. The monks dismiss it. They file a note. The note goes missing, but the humming comes again the next year, and the next, patterns, tiny ones, gentle ones, but always spirals. And here's your final historical rumor, drawn from a whispered tradition, barely preserved in the footnotes of half-burned pages. Some alchemists believe the universe was not built of matter, but recall that object existed only because they remembered how to, that forgetting was death, and that the function of silver was not wealth or adornment, but preservation, a way for the world to remind itself of what it had once been and what it might become again. The woodshed in the glade still hums, once a year, only at midnight, only for a minute, and only those standing very still can hear it. The note is soft, but layered, as though the air were remembering how to breathe in a language no one speaks anymore, and always, just after the hum ends, the same thing. A single silver nail appears on the doorstep, not hot, not cold, just waiting. Some say it's a gift, others say it's a seed. No one picks it up, not anymore, they've learned. Perrin's name fades from stories, but the spirals don't. They show up in places they shouldn't. Carved into the hulls of ships, painted into the frames of old altarpieces, even etched in rust on ancient tools unearthed by farmers in distant fields. And in each case, the same outcome, nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just a moment of quiet. And then a question, felt in the bones, do you remember now? For some, the answer is yes. For most, not yet, but the memory is patient. The silver waits, because it knows eventually we all come home. The last nail moves at dawn, not fast, not dramatically. It simply twitches once where it lies in the ash-dusted floor of the old workshop, as if making a final decision. Then it rolls, just an inch, and stops, pointing due north, toward nothing, or perhaps toward everything that came before. It makes no sound, but the floor beneath it hums briefly, softly, like the dying echo of a bell rung in a different world. That morning the glade is quiet. The air has changed. Crisper, a touch metallic, yes, but lighter too, as though the forest is no longer holding its breath, as if something deep beneath the soil has exhaled after a very, very long time. Bird song returns. A squirrel climbs the now ordinary willow, sniffing around, unafraid. Rain from the night before has left the grass damp, but not waterlogged. The trail where the silver once moved is still faintly visible, glimmering like dew, but already beginning to fade beneath fresh moss. The workshop, from a distance, looks like it always has, tilted, soot-streaked, half collapsing. But if you were to press your ear to the door, if you stood still long enough, you'd notice something strange. No wind, no settling creak, only a low ambient silence. A silence so deep it feels sculpted, as though something within has chosen now to rest. Inside, the silver nails have scattered, no longer forming spirals or skeletons or structures. They simply are, in drawers, in cracks in the floor, beneath folded parchment. A few on the sill, one inside a boot. They're not dormant, they're just finished. And the thing they helped build, gone, not removed, resolved. There's no record, no grave, no preserved wax seal or secret scroll, just the faint scent of burnt rosemary, the echo of a voice no longer breathing, and the ripple of a pattern that once passed through this place like a comet across the soul. In the village, people stop looking toward the glade. It no longer frightens them. It no longer pulls. It simply is. Part of the land, like the hills, or the sky, or the stars that still occasionally seem to shift just slightly when no one's watching. But there are moments, tiny ones. A spoon left in the hearth glows briefly after dusk. A mirror found at market reflects a silver thread between the buyer's hands. A child draws spirals on the floor without knowing why. They never last. The silver never lingers now. It passes through, leaves behind the suggestion of memory, and continues on. Because the pattern doesn't stay in one place. It doesn't need to. It only needs to be built once correctly. And then it moves on, like thought, or wind, or evolution, your final forgotten law. A letter buried in a library's sealed vaults for 700 years, never published. The author unknown. Just 5 words written in a precise silver ink. The shape has returned again. No explanation, no date, no context, but the ink hasn't faded. Not even slightly. It waits, still. So if you ever find a nail in the soil, silver, smooth, too perfect to be made by man, and it feels warm in your hand, or hums gently against your skin, or twitches ever so slightly when you say your name, let it be. Don't hammer it. Don't sell it. Just listen. You might remember something that was never taught. You might feel something recognizing you. And if you close your eyes, just long enough, you might even hear it whisper, "We're home now." And now that our journey has reached its quiet end, let's leave the glade behind. The rain has stopped, and the forest is calm again, mist drifting gently between the trees, like threads of thought half forgotten. The air no longer carries the weight of transformation. It simply exhales, easy, slow, soft. Whatever came has come, whatever moved has rested. And now, silver sleeps. The last of the nails lie quiet in the dark, not waiting for hands, not searching for form. They've remembered their shape. They've fulfilled their design. You too can rest. No need to turn the story over in your mind again. Let it settle. Let the spiral stop spinning. Let your breath fall in time with the trees. In, out, easy. You've carried this tale across a long night. You've walked with silver and silence and echoes. That's no small thing. So let the final image stay with you, not of a skeleton, or a tower, or even a nail, but of stillness, of silence not empty, but complete. And should you find yourself one day in the quiet woods, and the wind feels shaped, not blown, smile. The pattern remembers you too. Now, ease yourself deeper into your blankets, soften your grip on thought, and feel the weight of the world lift. All is well, all is whole. Sleep now, and if you dream of silver, that's okay. Dreams are just another way of remembering.